And that's why we'll move on and start talking about the modules in the next video. Beautiful. And once we understand the main problem with this code, where again, the moment code is technically still tiny, but as you can see, it is getting bigger and more annoying with every line. Now let's talk about the modules. And I guess let me just give you the main idea first, and then we'll talk about the implementations and all that good stuff. So first of all, what are the modules? Again, if you're familiar with ES6 modules, you already have the idea, but essentially that is encapsulated code. And the key here is that we're only sharing what we want. So we're only sharing minimum. How would that look like in real life? Well, I can go here with secret, and then I can type here super secret. And then since this variable is in this file, as we can see, you can access it anywhere. Okay, so by mistake, I can just access it. I can override it. Now, of course, you can make an argument that, I mean, it is made with const, but hopefully you get the gist. This is available to me everywhere in this file. So once we set up the module, you'll see what are the differences. Now, Node uses CommonJS library under the hood. That's what makes it happen. And then every file in Node is a module. Again, let me repeat, every file in Node is a module. So those superpowers that we will cover in just a few seconds, we have them by default. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to go to the store and buy some JavaScript code. No, we just get them by default. And the way the modules work, well, we simply need to create a new file, right? And I'll right away set up the names here because, of course, eventually this code will be sitting in the file name by the 3 hyphen and then the module basics or whatever. But the names as well as the function, well, it's going to be in a separate file. So what I'm trying to say is that in a root, of course, there's no folders or nothing, so everything is root. I'm going to go with 4. And again, I'm doing that because eventually this is going to be 3 hyphen module something. I'm going to go with maybe names, or you can type first module, whatever you would want. And I'm just going to go with names.js. Okay, awesome. And then I'll take these 3 variables from my app.js and I'll copy and paste in the names. And then also what I would want is to set up one more file. And of course, this one will be 5. And I don't know, we can say second module, or so I'll say here utils, something generic. So we set that up. And now, of course, what I would want is to grab this function from the app.js and copy and paste in the utils. And now, $64,000 question. Is this app going to work or is it going to break? And of course, the answer is it's going to break because we have no access right now to say hi or to John or Peter. So why don't we go to the names and console log something? And as a side note, yes, you can console log this in the app.js. It is a file, so by default, it is in a module. But since we'll do most of our work in the names and utils first, why don't we go to names? And that way we can also see how we can run the file just by using Node. And what I would want your console log is the global by the name of module. So in the names, go below or above the variables, doesn't really matter, and go with console log and then module. And remember to run node and then whatever is the file name. So in my case, it is 4 dash and then names.js. You run this and you'll notice something pretty cool where we have the object, and in that object, we have quite a few properties. Now, the one that I'm interested in the most is this exports one. And it tells me that this export is an object. And the way the CommonJS syntax works, whatever I'm going to dump in that export, I'm going to be able to access anywhere in the application. So that's the key. Remember, we're only sharing the minimum. So it's up to us to set those values in that exports object. We decide what goes in there. Previously, remember, secret was accessible everywhere in my app.js. Now in the names, I can be, hey, you know what? John and Peter, yeah, I'm sharing them. Anywhere in the application, we can access that. But the secret variable, no, this is just going to be local. So I'm going to add here, I guess, the comment by the name of local. And that way, at least we understand. So this is going to be, I mean, I'm not going to use global, but I'm just going to say that share. So we're sharing this with the rest of our application. And then if I know that this is a object and it is sitting in the module, how does that work? Well, we go with module, then it is an object. So we go with export, and we have multiple ways how we can set this up. But the most basic one will simply say that, yep, it is an object. And inside of that object, there's going to be two properties, John and Peter. Now I can probably already guess that we're using a ES6 syntax. Since the key name is exactly the same as the value, well, we can simply pass it, right? So we have John and Peter. So now what happens in the app.js, we can access them. So I can go back, and this is the case where we'll need to run that require. Remember in the globals, we talked about this function. So in order to share them, we need to use module.exports. And essentially, I'm setting up the object like so, where I go with whatever values I would like to share. Now, in order to access them, I need to go with require, and I can assign it to a variable, or I can simply require. Now, in our case, we will assign it to the variable, and I'll use the same type of syntax where I'm going to go with names, just so we can console log that. And this is going to be equal to a require. So that's my function. And as a parameter, we need to pass in where the module is located. So where is this data coming from? And always, 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 you will be setting up your own module. You have to start with dot. Now, sometimes your modules will be 2 levels up, I don't know, 3 levels up, whatever. Then, of course, you'll start with dot dot. But you'll always start with this one dot, because there's also going to be a third-party modules, and there's going to be built-in modules in Node. And then we'll use just these quotation marks. Again, super, super important. Every time you create your own module, you'll have to start with dot and then /. So essentially, you're giving a path. Now, in our case, what is the path? Well, I'm looking for the names, right? So I set up here the path, and then if I console log the names, I should see something pretty cool, where I go with names, and there it is. Now I'm going to run node and then app.js. Now keep in mind, we're not running names anymore. We go with node and app.js. Now, of course, it still complains that we have no access to high. Let me comment this one out. So let's say node and app.js and check it out. Now, of course, we have the object with John and Peter. And we explicitly said what we would want to export. So we go with exports. And that way, no one has access to the secret one. So this secret one is only for this file. And of course, we can do the same thing in the utils as well, right? So we have the say hi, and we go with module and exports. And I can just simply set it equal to. Now, the reason why I was setting this up as a object, because I had multiple things. I had John and Peter. And don't worry, in the next video, I'll show you alternative syntax, how you can also set this up. But in this case, I have object, and then, of course, I'm setting these properties. And as a side note, this is just my preferred way of actually using the exports. Again, there's multiple ways how we can do that, and I will cover the other ways in next video. But this is just my preferred method. That's why I right away set my exports equal to an object and then pass these two properties. And in the utils, since I only have one thing, I'm just going to go with say hi. That's it. I'm saying that I'm going to be exporting my function. So say hi, like so. And once I have exported my function, now, of course, I need to go back to the app.js, import my function, the same name. And I'm going to go with say say hi, and that one is going to be coming from the different file, of course. So we go with 5 and then utils. Notice here how we don't need to pass in the JS. If it is a JS file, we just simply omit the extension as long as the file name, of course, matches. And then I can remove. Now, if you want, you can console log, but I already know that I'm going to have the function over there. I'll uncomment my say hi. So now, of course, there's going to be no error. And let me clear the console. And again, we run the node and then app.js. And there it is. Now, of course, we have a different error where it says, well, John is not defined. All right. But I know that John is sitting in the names, right? So here we have multiple flavors. Either you can destructure it. So instead of going with names, I can go John and Peter. That is definitely one option. Or I can go with property names, right? So I can say names and then John. And then the second one is names and Peter. Names and Peter. And now hopefully everything works. Otherwise, you're probably thinking that I'm just messing with you. There it is. Now we have hello there, Susan, John, and Peter. And effectively what we did, we separated our concerns. Again, the main idea is that every file by default is a module. And then when it comes to a modules, we are in charge what we are sharing. And in order to export or make it something available from this module, we go with module exports. And then we just set up the functionality, whether this is going to be a object that we're exporting or we're simply exporting as a function. So we set this equal to the exports. And if you're familiar with ES6 modules, as you can see, this is very familiar to the export default and then whatever you're exporting as default, whether that is a function, whether that is a React component or whatever. Notice I'm exporting as default. So of course, when I'm importing this, in this case, app.js, well, I already know that this is a function. So I can name this whatever I would want. And the same goes here. Since I'm exporting this as object, I can call this shake and bake. As long as I access it later, of course, I'll be able to access the property. As long as the name matches to whatever I set up over here.